Welcome to Status Update, the social media and creator podcast that you can listen to whilst you're working, because this is a work podcast. I'm Stevie Johnson, MD of Disrupt and ex-television personality. As always today, I am joined by my friend, colleague, and the voice of Gen Z, Jake Crabb.
Hi, I'm Jake. You probably don't know me yet, but hopefully in time you will.
In today's episode of Status Update, we are joined by a world-renowned photographer, the first black man to shoot the cover of Vogue, and founder of Culture 3. It's Misan Harriman. And in this episode, we cover...
I shot the protest images of COVID, and that's when my life changed forever. First thing I'll say is stop being fucking lemmings. I took a whole bunch of shit photographs because I didn't know what I was doing. Actually, I do not want to pull down Churchill statues.
So whether you're on your commute, you're at work, taking your break, jump in. This is Status Update. Misan, thank you very much for agreeing to do this and joining us on the show.
Hey guys,
Thank you,
my
yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, I've got to say, Misan, when you agreed to come and do this, for me, I was really excited because you, without wanting to wax too lyrical, you embody everything that we want on this type of podcast. We talk a lot about the future being creator. And by that, we don't mean influencers and influencer marketing. We are an influencer marketing agency, but there's so much else that comes into being what a creator is nowadays. And with you, you're a photographer, you're a future thinker, you're an activist, you're a speaker. There's all of this. I mean, is there one of those that defines you more than the other?
I'm a truth seeker and a storyteller and a custodian of the human condition.
I love that. Things that I hadn't written down that you might have been, but it's amazing to hear them in your own
I have
words.
to say, before you even kick off, Status Update is fascinating because I was thinking about the history of kind of Web2, and I think there are a lot of young people today that don't know what a status update is. Because think about it, before we had JPEGs and videos, I mean, that was all you could do is say, use words.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a nice throwback. I love the title.
Oh,
It's good.
thanks
you very much.
One of the questions we actually like to, I feel like we've already broken the ice, but one of the questions we like to ask to break the ice is asking our guests if they can remember a specific status update from when they first started using social media that they might look back on now in a different light or cringe potentially.
I'm consistent in my nerdish endeavors.
Yeah.
So it would have been something linked to a film that made me feel something, and I would have said, "Oh my god, you have to go and see Last of the Mohicans" or something. Like I'm just that guy that's overly excited, and everyone's like, "All right, calm down."
Amazing. But I've listened to some of your talks before, and you do speak about different forms of art, whether it be film, poetry, music, making you feel something greater than the everyday person might feel with regards to that.
Yeah.
I loved what you said in your most recent TED Talk. You described yourself as a great observer of content.
Yes.
I thought that was a great title.
Yeah, I mean, you look, it's. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the great thing that we do that separates us from the rest of the natural world. You know, from the campfires thousands of years ago to the movies that we go and see in the cinema.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very much on, you know, the neurodivergent spectrum. I struggle functioning in what society has said is a normal way to function. My mind is wired very differently. And a big part of how my mind is wired is my emotional engine completely opens itself up to music, to song, to film, to dance. And I'm now old enough to recognize that not everyone's like that. But another big part of my job is to lead you down that road to understand how extraordinary the journey of unlocking feeling through culture can be for all. Most people aren't like that because social programming makes us be afraid to open certain doors, even though you can feel something's there. You walk away from it a lot. I help you smash that door down.
Amazing. And I mean, it sounds like it's almost a newer realization for you, and that throughout your kind of upbringing and early adult life, you were still maybe confused as to how your mind would work and what that acceptance might be.
I was ashamed rather than confused.
Strong word.
Yeah,
ashamed,
yeah. No, I know, you know, when I always say, I've said in many talks now that when I met my now wife, a big part of me becoming whatever I am today is that she fell in love with all the parts of my mind that I was ashamed of.
Okay.
And that's as profoundly an honest thing as I can ever say to anyone.
Yeah.
When you have someone that looks at the parts of yourself that you wish you didn't have and loves those parts in a way that you maybe didn't think would ever happen, it unlocks the full version of yourself. And that's exactly what happened to me.
And I feel like it's still so rare for people to find that. This isn't a podcast about love, but
love is ultimately what led you to becoming the great photographer that you are today.
Yeah,
it's what led you to picking up the camera and
Can
starting your
you tell
incredible
us the
journey.
backstory of that, Misan? Because we don't always dwell too much on people's backstories, on this podcast. But I feel like this is an amazing story that I want people that don't know it yet to hear about when you first took up photography.
Yeah. I mean, I had loved photography my whole life, just like film, anything that made me feel something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, the camera to me was, you get on Amazon, you order a camera, it's kind of like a gym membership. You take 10 pictures, they look shit, and you never pick it up.
You give up.
Or you just have a disposable camera at a party and you take your pictures. That was my relationship with the camera. For my 40th, I got gifted a camera from my wife, who was sick and tired of me talking about great artists, great photographers. And we went to Rajasthan in India.
I've been to Rajasthan, an incredible place. Wow.
It's such a stunning place, and I took a whole bunch of shit photographs because I didn't know what I was doing. There was something about holding this seemingly inanimate object, though, that made me feel safe even then, even with bad pictures. And when I got home, after looking at the terrible images, I went on YouTube, and I was like, let me figure out how this thing works, how the shutter speed and aperture and ISO, what a lens is really about, what is a prime lens, what's a zoom lens. And I just watched everything I could about imagery, right? I had already watched all the documentaries about image makers, so I knew my eye was really well trained on the great people whose shoulders we stand on, but I didn't understand about camera companies and lenses. And what I would say is that for everything you don't know, there's always a man or woman in their garage just uploaded a YouTube video.
Yeah,
that can help you figure it out
on anything.
Exactly, and also I'm at home failing and failing and failing.
Yeah,
until I suddenly don't, and that's how I learned how to be an above average photographer.
Incredible, and I think there's a lesson there in all different walks of life is about that consistently, that showing up, that being prepared to fail. And over time, incremental gains, etc., you can really make great advancements in whatever people want to do. So,
but before you those words, beautifully said by you, are powerful. But we have to be so careful about, you have to show up, and because the truth is, I wouldn't have shown up if this was a photography school.
Yeah, because you were in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, I would have been too scared to.
Yeah,
because I failed every flipping exam I ever took. The idea of a professor telling me about photography history and this is how you hold the camera and this is how it's done. I would have just not lasted. So it's the thing is finding the space where you can thrive without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Is the difference between the thousands, if not millions of people on this planet who are doing things that they're not supposed to do. What if the next Beyonce or Jay-Z or Stormzy or LeBron James, right, or Messi didn't have that place where they felt safe to chase their dreams? And that's why vulnerability is so important to me, because a huge part of my success is finding a way to handle my fear of failure.
Self-taught from the age of 40, you haven't been going that long. You've shot some of the most famous faces in the world, some of whom you've actually just mentioned there, but also the likes of Idris Elba, Jay-Z, Rihanna, Tom Cruise, etc. Is there still an element within yourself where you struggle to believe where you find yourself? Is there an element of imposter syndrome that's within you still?
Yeah. I mean, a big part of my journey is daily self-love and the battle with self-doubt. They're very good bedfellows, right? I do, recently I was in Hotel du Cap, Eden Rock in Cannes with Harrison Ford, and it was the day after I shot him, and we were just talking, and he that's a true Hollywood icon.
Yeah.
And we were talking about photography and the craft of it and how much he loves it. And that was a moment where I thought, this is really, really surreal, because it didn't feel like I wasn't supposed to be there. It felt like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's almost out of body experience, but it felt right at the same time.
Absolutely.
I mean, I find it extraordinary that, like you say, you only really picked up the camera 5 years ago for the first time. And now here you are today.
Yeah, and minus 2
years of COVID.
2 years of COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I shot the protest images of COVID during COVID, and that's when my life changed forever. But my portrait of Marcus Rashford has just been acquired by the National Portrait Gallery, and it's if you're bored, you can walk in there and you'll see it, and it's right next to the portrait of King Charles, and again, that's another just like incredulous thing for me to think, here is someone that never thought I would ever have a point of view, and now my children's children will be able to walk into the MPG
wonderful.
and see a portrait of a truly great Brit in Mr. Rashford.
Yeah, and you yourself have spoken about an image of Coretta Scott King, and when seeing that, you kind of learned that photography can let us know the work that we need to do in the world. Can you elaborate on that and tell us a bit more about what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I was young. I was young when I first saw this image at school, and it's taken by Moneta Sleet Jr., who was the first Black man to win the Pulitzer for photography. It's of the wife and widow of Martin Luther King in his funeral. And it's this extraordinary image of Coretta Scott King with her daughter Bernice on her lap, somehow looking graceful on such an unimaginable day. And I was too young to fully understand the gravity of everything, but I was able to recognize that what I was looking at was more important than birthday snaps. It was more important than just candid moments. It made me stop and think, wow, so people like me have been treated in a way that isn't right, and it's been frozen in a moment. And that made me want to go on a journey to learn about the history that I wasn't being taught, and to understand about civil rights and the inequalities of this life.
Yeah, and is that something now that, do you feel like a lot of that history is being taught and spoken about more than it was when you were growing up in the schools that you went to?
I don't know if it is, because this is why I'm so proud of under 25s. I really am, because when I shot the protest images, I saw people from all walks of life, all races, that had decided they were not happy with our collective past. Right. And they certainly wanted to change what they've seen in the past and their present. And they came out to fight for the human rights of people that look like me. And a lot of those people may have racist grandparents, may have racist uncles, aunties, parents, but they've used this thing everyone bashes called the internet to unlearn many things. And they're like, no, dad, no, grandma, no, this is not the way. It's just the same way young people are so comfortable with people on the gender spectrum or the sexuality spectrum, whereas Oslo, at least people, I'm 45, have such a binary view of the world. So for me, I think that there is a generation of unlearning happening. I don't think it's coming necessarily from schools. It's coming from groups of people that are deciding to think for themselves and decide what our history truly was. A great example of how that works is I won't say the news channel, but I was live on the 6 o'clock news on a certain channel, and the lady threw me a bomb. Basically,
Right.
she said, "Oh, you're BLM. You're
Yeah.
so do you want to pull down Churchill's statues?"
God, right.
And in England, that's a hot potato.
That's a
Sure.
that's a loaded question.
And I was like, okay, we're on live evening news, and she's asked me whether I want to pull down. And I thought, okay, let me just be myself. And I said, actually, I do not want to pull down Churchill's statues. What I would love are placards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have in gold, at the front, the great wartime leader that he was.
Mm-hmm.
On the left, you can have writings about how gifted a painter he was and his time spent in Blenheim painting.
Yeah.
On the right, you can write about him being like me, an aficionado. He loves a good cigar.
Right.
And on the back, you can also write about his utterly abhorrent views towards black and brown people that are well documented.
Yeah.
All these are the truths of the man.
Sure.
And instead of putting down the statue, why don't you have those plaques and let the average man walk around it and he can decide what he thinks of Winston Churchill.
You mentioned just previously as part of some of that response around the online learning that's happening and people educating themselves nowadays versus what they might have been taught in school. And when you talk about the internet, you really mention your love for the internet, which I think is incredibly refreshing because a lot of the time now people can see negative connotations, but you speak of your love for it. What else has it done for you?
What else has done for me? Look, I'm very dyslexic, so I use Grammarly.
All right.
Which is amazing.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah. I know I'm not alone.
No, you're not.
It's little things like that really help people that have challenges navigate through life with a new sense of confidence, right? I've always found the internet to be my savior in many ways. If I need to look for inspiration, I'm good enough at curating my experience online that I will always find it. Most people are not, which is one of the reasons, I've set up media businesses that can help people not get lost in the worst of the internet.
Incredible. Yeah, because there is a lot of bad stuff there. And your latest venture is Culture 3. Tell us a little bit more about that and obviously the advancement of the internet as we're going to find it.
It's a really interesting time. I think it's the first time since, social media changed everything that we are in a place where it's all changing. But this time, a lot of us don't realize because it's happening so fast.
Yeah.
And we're so embedded into our daily habits online. But I think what's coming with AI, blockchain, quantum computing is incredibly exciting, but it also needs to be understood, held accountable, and explained to the average person who's busy trying to pay their mortgage, basically. And on top of that, I think the fears of the next internet, whether you call it Web3 or Web 3.0, can be allayed by culture itself. I've always believed that if you marriage what we do best, which is culture in all its forms, with the borderless reach of the internet itself, we can carve out a brighter future for us all. I recently read that Bill Gates thinks one of the Microsoft chatbots in a couple of years will be able to give the same level of education as a university professor.
I don't doubt that either.
And if that is true, and we'll see we'll see. Imagine the millions of people that don't have an identity, part of the migrant crisis, that can get the one thing that can lift them out of poverty, which is a world-class education. People don't quite understand how, more than anything else, giving someone the ability to climb out of that level of poverty, it's making sure you feed the mind.
And that is supposedly only a few years away.
It's probably already out.
Yeah. Well, like you say, obviously at the moment, up to the point right now with all the advancements in AI, we have had this great teacher in YouTube, because no matter what you're trying to learn, there's a million different ways you can learn it depending on how you consume content and how you take on knowledge. I've heard you talk about obviously where blockchain is now and how it's allowing the world to democratize things like the world of art and give kind of everyone a fighting chance at success. Why do you think now is the time where that is such an important message to send out, or it's such an important advancement for the world of art and things like that?
I bought my first JPEG in 2013, pretty much pre-blockchain.
Yeah. People must have thought you were insane.
They thought bonkers. I think it was 10 quid or 15 quid. I bought a Damien Hirst and Tracy Emin pieces for 10 or 15 quid from a company called Sedition. I think they're still around. Yeah. And the provenance was another JPEG that had the signature and date by the artist. Pretty cool. And I remember going to dinner parties and people were like, why are you buying a picture of someone's art?
I would have been that person at dinner party saying that.
But it's cognitively, human beings are very funny because, you can get a 50 quid note and you'll believe that that's valuable. Right?
Yeah. But in reality, it's a piece of paper.
It's cognitively what you're willing to believe. You go into your ATM and you type some numbers and the screen tells you that that's what you're worth. And you believe it.
Yeah.
For me, because I'm a big gamer, my digital experiences have always been at least as valuable to me as the analog realm. Okay. And in many times in my life, I remember being in my late teens playing Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Great game.
And that was, I wasn't in a happy place. And I remember one Christmas, that's all I did. I just locked myself away and played that game. And I genuinely was happier in that. And that is a metaverse experience. People throw around metaverse. That wasn't, my trinkets that I owned and my horse and everything, that was me, right? And I felt safe and happy in that realm. And I'm telling you this because I've never did anyone to persuade me that there is intrinsic value in digital experiences. The idea that people have an issue with that is extraordinary to me. Watching Netflix is a digital experience.
One I'm very fond of as well.
Yeah, but it's every minute of every day almost we're living these digital experiences, and people seem to get scared of this metaverse term being thrown around, whereas actually we are all living in some kind of metaverse every day.
Of course we are. And people find, it's very much something that my generation has done, and it predates my generation. As you said, you played Ocarina of Time, great game, in your teens, but obviously now people live in these games. They live on their PlayStation, their Xboxes, and they have actually quite lucrative careers out of it. So it's not just a form of escapism.
No. I mean, the value system has just been slower to catch up. I mean, okay, I'm a photographer. I saw something with Sotheby's, fantastic, gave the proceeds to charity. The person that owns it, I believe they're in Israel. That's literally all I know.
Yeah.
Right? If they sell it tomorrow for £1 billion, I will get 100% of nothing. Right? Whereas if I mint an image and within the smart contract, I can have a 5, 10%, even 15% royalty in perpetuity. And if I set that up properly, even if I get hit by a car, my wife and kids at the point of sale can get it sent to their crypto wallet. That is a level of efficiency and support for an artist that is literally revolutionary.
Yeah.
Let's just be very, very clear. And that kind of royalty system in time, I think will enter other aspects of business life. And it's certainly, I think it's going to enter things like real estate deals as well. But to give the artist that kind of power to know that even if they don't know who their buyer is, as long as there is secondary market action, they are receiving a royalty, I think is a beautiful way to support creators.
So I think leading on from that, the general perception of non-fungible tokens for most people is that they're hyper expensive images of colorful cartoon animals that maybe aren't worth that much as they were last year. You obviously have an extremely different vision of what NFTs are, what they will allow us to do in the future. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Well, just like any kind of great tech is only of use if they're actually, the humans behind it aren't plonkers, right?
Yeah, it's right.
And it's kind of PFP culture. I love an aspect of PFP culture because I like the sense of community and having an avatar that represents you online, not just you, but a group of people that are trying to do something interesting. But when two things, basically gambling and the crypto bro mentality entered the space, people were not really coming for community. They were coming for
ownership.
No, not ownership.
Just their own personal benefits.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Complete. Yeah. It wasn't
to buy and sell.
Yeah. And then if you put in the grifter mentality of people that were creating too many fake projects for the liquidity in the system, it was a self-fulfilling thing, right? Now, that's just one aspect of how non-fungible tokens are using. I think crypto art is a very different thing.
Yeah.
Art has existed as long as we've written books. From the etchings in the pyramids, we've always been, so art is a great intangible, and there's no part of our human story where art is going to go out of fashion.
No.
And the fact that this is another way to have irrevocable proof of provenance and royalty with art is really interesting, which is why the crypto art market is actually still quite healthy. So one of one's phygital, so physical and digital, you can get a bit of both, and then low edition works, I think are going to do really, really well. And of course, photography, I think has a fighting chance of being such a huge medium with blockchain, because it is the single most accessible thing to anyone on the street. Like if you show them a photo, they know what that is.
Yeah.
So applying a value system to it is easier than showing them a pixelated monkey or one of the Bored Apes. So yes, I think there is a long way to go, but to define it by the monkey JPEG casino is I think quite short-sighted for folks. They need to look at the technology and understand that grifters are going to grift, but the technology is extraordinary.
Do you think that the gamification of NFTs and blockchain will be almost an education for young people to, because obviously it's not going anywhere. NFT is the future, blockchain is the future. Do you think gaming is the way that young people will learn about that tech and maybe a bit more about Web3 rather than taking more of a...
I think young people just get things...
They just pick it up.
Yeah, it's more 30 plus that ask like, but why isn't social programming is powerful. It's like it has to be in a museum. It has to be this curator. And as someone that is in those rooms, I think it's BS. The idea that one person who usually hasn't created anything in their lives is deciding who a great artist is an affront to me.
Yeah.
And this is a way to have a fighting chance of merit-based opportunity for so many other people.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to fight for that.
I mean, we've spoken about so many amazing benefits and what the future can look like within Web3. Why is there still an element of resistance from people to fully dive into it, both from the everyday person and if we look at it from a marketing perspective as well? There still seems to be that resistance.
It's clunky. Do you remember when you used to dial up on AOL?
Yeah.
And
I am old enough to remember that.
Do you remember when email servers wouldn't talk to each other?
Yeah.
Like you literally could only email someone that was on the same server as you. That's where we are. It's not a smooth experience. Having to, remember the security process of owning a crypto wallet is not for the average person, right? So there's that, which is, it's going to be difficult to have mass adoption when the process needs you to do things that most people just don't want to do.
And to learn new things as well. I think people are quite resistant to that.
But that's moving really fast. And then there is the generation of builders that have come that have grossly misused the opportunity that the technology has presented, which also happened in the .com boom. Many people overpromised and underdelivered, and many businesses failed. I think that's still more of that, more pain like that's going to happen. But then the real people that are quiet, that aren't talking, are going to present themselves very slick ways to use it, and ticketing as well. I know Ticketmaster's looking into this, it could be a very useful thing for how you go to concerts, how you value your experiences. You were at Beyonce in Tottenham Stadium in 2023, and that could be very valuable to somebody digitally. Yeah. So all of that's coming, but believe me, it's coming. So and when it does, I think people will see that this technology isn't going away.
Yeah. Big up Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, by the way. It's the best thing that happened in the last 12 months was Beyonce playing there. And I'm a Spurs fan, so I can
Sorry, mate.
So I can say that. When it comes to the metaverse itself, or a metaverse, there seemed to be a race for brands, if you look at it from a brand perspective, to be the first in there, to be running campaigns, etc. It's maybe slowed down a little bit now, but for any kind of marketing managers or directors or brand managers that might be listening, what advice would you give them if they are representing a brand and wanting to kind of like touch back into Web3 and the metaverse?
First thing I'll say is stop being fucking lemmings. Honestly.
Clip it.
Honestly, just lazy.
Yeah.
so many CMOs don't actually want to look at what it is. They want someone to take away the problem. I've met many people at agencies that are like, yeah, this metaverse, Misan, you seem to be, help. And they're not that interested.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are men of a certain age, that it's just another problem that they have to deal with, and it's utterly performative, which is disingenuous to what's really, really coming.
Sure.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is there isn't a consistent metaverse, right? And I don't think there really will be. I think they're going to be large scale digital immersive experiences. Nintendo is a walled garden. They ain't opening up to anyone.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to jump out of Fortnite and into Mario Kart. I don't think that's going to happen because IP matters. But when Nintendo properly do a fully immersive metaverse experience, it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar experience because we're all going to pay for it and love it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how can there be a single metaverse experience? I think a lot of people say that because it helps them, promote whatever startup they have so they can get the fundraising. We're going to build the first meta. It's not possible. If you look at the most valuable IP in let's say gaming, these are serious companies that are not about to just open themselves up to everyone. Brands need to understand that the future isn't just going to be you press a button and you can reach a certain type of person in one go. You really need to curate, and we're not doing enough of that.
Yeah. Do you see any kind of brands or anyone you potentially work with Culture 3 who are kind of really have embraced Web3, blockchain, NFTs, and you think they are the brands we should be looking towards
and that are doing it well?
That are doing it well, yeah.
I think rather than who's doing it well, it's always interesting to see if you look at the sort of money involved in luxury, there is nothing in blockchain that is actually going to move the needle for them yet. So what they're doing is these lovely capsule collections, and I think Alexander Arnault is, he's got a CryptoPunk, and they've done chains and a few other things, and they've got this new trunk thing going on. It's cool, but it's dipping one's little finger. Yeah, and Porsche have done something, Adidas have done something. It's testing.
Yeah.
We've had briefs from clients at Disrupt wanting to tap into it a little bit, and it is dipping the toe, and it's not the fully fledged version yet. And it almost feels like brands are trying to be the ones that can say they've done it.
Yeah, for now, So it's nice to say there's a Web3 experience, but there are plenty of brands that literally, and I'm not naming any brands, they will be doing a Web3 experience, but if you run into the creative director of the brand, they're like, what? I don't are we? The thing about me working in fashion, I know so many of these, the sort of more senior people that literally are dealing with the creative director of a company, and none of them seem to
know what's going on.
Any clue about their Web3 drops.
What we do at Disrupt, a lot of our focus is influencer marketing. Web3 is exciting and so on, but just going back to the influencer marketing side of things for now, the everyday influencers are becoming more creative these days. Traditionally, creatives might have looked down a little bit on influencers. And one of the battles that we've got is the image that influencers portray, especially on a platform like Instagram. They portray this perfect life. You speak a lot about the fact that we actually live in an imperfect world. So what are the pitfalls of influencers continuing to post about things being all happy, all lovey, all dovey, etc.?
Well, I think it's the nature of how you choose to influence. There would have been a generation when people realized that you could earn a living by having a large following that didn't think much beyond that, and which meant that they would follow every trend. So, if you look at toxic masculinity, there are loads of Instagram pages that I see that are basically saying the same thing. They're telling you that if you do this, you will earn 20K a week. And there's just watches everywhere, helicopters everywhere, lots of tight trousers, tight shirts, and women are just sort of
brushed under the carpet.
Well, they are there for dressing, right? Which is hyper insidious. above and beyond the misogyny, and I think that is probably in a wide array of a generation of influencers. I'm just focusing on the male toxic thing. You can do it for beauty influencing, lifestyle influencing, and the you know, you get those couples that are influencers together, and they have their eggs look perfect, and you know, it looks like, you know, nothing's ever been moved in their apartment. They go to you know, the Balearic Islands and in Formentera, and it's seemingly empty, and there's a drone that seems to follow them around everywhere. That is perceived perfection. And all of us, in an act of God, went through a mental health crisis, which basically hasn't happened since the Second World War, I would say, in England at least, right? Where a whole nation was like, whoa. To come out of that and to look on your newsfeed and have people telling us that they're doing fine is just, it's just a fallacy, right? So I wouldn't call myself an influencer, but I had a note that I read that really, it brought me to tears, and it also made me realize how important it is to reach people through you just being yourself, warts and all.
Absolutely.
And it's, you know, I should read it.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah, of course you can.
Because it's from a stranger. Where's my phone? I've realized that there are a lot of parents that message me who have put their kids onto my page, and I talk so openly about my struggles with mental health. You know? And if people presume that I'm successful, and they see a man like me talking about not always having the answers, not really, you know, just figuring shit out like everyone else.
It's what people need to hear.
It's really important. So this is from a stranger. Mr. Harriman, I find myself rather short on words. I need to point exactly how your work, your photography, yes, your work, really put the generosity of spirit and willingness to be vulnerable into my heart. Whether it be sharing your own navigation through and of the world of music and movies, and the moments that move you impact me. Perhaps odd to hear from a stranger, but sir, I am glad you exist. I am glad I went down the rabbit hole one day trying to find the name of the photographer who took a photograph that unexpectedly moved me to tears. I share your reflections like these with my mum, who has lived with a lot of shame around her dyslexia since childhood. And I share your visual work with my students. Your impact truly extends farther than you may ever know. Do know that. Wishing you and yours great joy and peace to celebrate beneath the summer sun. Now, I'm sharing that with you because I read that in a moment where I wasn't really doing well.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm struggling and I have a lot of privilege, how the heck is everyone else doing? How the heck is everyone else doing? And what I would say in influencer marketing, I'm not asking you to be like a wall of I'm depressed, but just let people know that life has peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
My goodness. Otherwise, what are you selling? And with brands, you know, when I work with brands, it has to be me. There are brands that I have that have said to me, Misan, we love everything you're amazing. You really are. But for the 2 weeks before we do this campaign with you, can you not, you know, say a lot of, you know, your viewpoints, maybe civil rights or things like that? And I'm just like, fuck off. No. And there's no money that will make me do it. I just won't do it. You know, so it's like, what do you stand for as an influencer? How you learn to wear your own vulnerability with pride, because you end up having a more loyal customer base when all said and done. If you are the perfect person, there are a million people doing that, which means that people won't even, they'll use you if you're there on the algorithm shows you them, but they're not going to look for you. So we need to have this new generation of influential souls that are not afraid to show their humanity.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, and just to touch on that, we're definitely seeing, we've actually just released an article on it a few weeks ago, that we believe that influencer culture is dying and the culture of content creators is on the rise. Like you said,
I love that.
Internet users don't like signing on to TikTok and seeing someone live this perfect life. They've got all these expensive things. They like signing on and relating to someone. And I think that actually now holds a lot more influence than someone creating a piece of content and saying, I've got this, you haven't.
Yeah, or also this is not the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
It's also a big one, right? Trust me, I've shot a lot of very, very successful, famous people, and they are going through it all.
Yeah.
You know, and of course their business is designed to make you think that they're not, which is a different thing from influencing, right? A movie star is protected, and you know, they have publicists that are literally paid to project a specific point of view. But for me as a photographer, my lens doesn't lie. So what I'm looking through, and when I'm spending time with them, I see their hopes, their fears, their challenges in a way that helps me understand that we all going through it. You know?
Well, I suppose when you shoot someone, they have to be. Do you try and encourage them to be as vulnerable as they can when they're in front of you?
No, I mean, I encourage. The only time I really start getting involved with, you know, I can't stand. I have 2 daughters. So I hate the male gaze.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, talking about unlearning, as I said, the other thing you have to understand that in fashion and film, especially in fashion photography, you know, 90% of the images have been taken by men over the last 100 years. And a lot of those images were taken by men that were pretty horrible and were taking advantage of underage girls and everything, and underage boys. That, you know, a lot of these photographers were wrong-uns. There've been many times where I've shot women and I've been like, you know, are you, you know, why are you posing in that way? And I've had some famous actresses break down in tears after I take them aside, and I was like, this doesn't feel like it's you. Wow. And you know, she'll look at me and say, it's not me, but this is what my manager, this for years. I'm like, you don't have to move, you know, bend your way that way. You don't. I said, just be you. There's nothing more beautiful than just you. And then I'll, you know, make sure people leave us, and we just make visual poetry together. And the amount, I've had many high-profile women say that's the first time I felt myself. And that's a very sad thing.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, you see the side of these people that the rest of the world never will get to.
Misan, we've covered so much there. The way that the passion that you talk about your subjects, but also how eloquent you are and the words that you use has been just an absolute privilege to sit back and listen. There's lots that I'm going to take away from this. I'm sure Jake's the same, and all of our listeners. You know, I think the way I think of Web3 now is it being an opportunity for voices less heard. That's something that I've really, really got from this. So thank you for your time. You've done a lot of amazing work. You've touched a lot of people along the way. I love the fact that you shared that message with us. I can say from my own personal experience, this isn't about me, but you know, having watched your TED talk and the way that you speak about being a father and how you now accept the immense grace and privilege of that through photography really kind of touched me, and I got a little bit emotional listening to that. So I advise everyone to go and listen to and watch Misan's TED talk if they have the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Misan.
And having us. Jake, do you want to sign us off with the call to actions?
Guys, thank you so much for updating your status with us today. It was great to sit down with Misan to discuss the future of Web3. If you've enjoyed today's episode of Status Update, why not follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you found today's discussion insightful, share it with your friends or colleagues to keep them in the loop. Once again, thanks for stopping by for this episode of Status Update. We'll see you in the next one.